Hello everyone, this is the 5th Ethical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul, and tonight is October 30th. I'm sorry, September 30th. I'm thinking October 1st. 2015, and tonight we're going to continue our study of paper 49, and we're in section 2, and we're on at 219, number 3, the gravity types. That's where we stopped last week. Okay, and that's where we're going to take it back up tonight. So let me say a quick prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for bringing us together again tonight. We pray that you open our hearts and our minds, that we might learn something and that we might share it with others. And thank you for this opportunity to come together as friends and study together. We pray that you'll bless this meeting. We say this in the name of your Son's name, Jesus. Amen. Okay. Number 3, the gravity types. You are going to kind of have to excuse me. I might talk a little weird tonight because I am missing that too. So it does affect my speech, unfortunately. I haven't gotten used to it yet. So, Tim, would you like to start off reading for us, please, the gravity types? Yeah. Okay.
The gravity types. By modification of creative design, intelligent beings are so constructed that they can freely function on spheres, both similar and larger than Urantia, thus being in measure accommodated to the gravity of those planets, which are not of ideal size and density.
Yes, and density. That's Tuxie. He wanted to put his 2 cents in. Okay, now I want to mention something because we didn't mention this last week, I don't think. Number 1, when they talk about these types, there's going to have overlap, right? So that does not mean that each one of these types are exclusive. That's the only type of beings this is. So if you're talking about humans, you know, we're both atmospheric types and electronic types, both, you know, the electric types. So you can be a mixture of 2 or more of these different things that we're talking about. So I wanted to make sure everybody was clear on that. So this paragraph, they're talking about gravity, and the reason being is depending on the size of the planet, the gravity can be less than it is here on Earth or more than it is, right? So if you have a larger planet, you have a tendency to have more oppressive gravity, right? On a smaller planet, they have a higher axial rotation on the smaller planets, so there's less gravity on those. And those types of planets both affect the humans that are on that. So if you have less gravity, the humans are going to tend to be, or the beings are going to tend to be taller, right? Because there's not as much gravity compressing them all the time. And if there's more gravity, that'd be what? That'd be shorter, right? So, and they mention here that there is one group of humans in Satania that's 2.5 feet. So that's the smallest one. They said almost all of them are over 4 feet, but there is one group that's 2.5 feet. So they would be very short, you know.
So hey, Roger.
Yeah.
These gravity types, they're not Urantians. They're human beings. They're completely different from humans.
No, they're human beings. They would be just like we are, but they would be different because of the gravity that affects them. So they either be taller or shorter, one of the 2. So.
And I had one more question for you.
Sure.
The atheists, you know how they always argue and how they leave God out?
Yeah.
And they always use that gravity response?
Yeah.
Well, we've got a response for them, and that's basically the eternal Isle of Paradise, which is the producer of all gravity, correct?
That's correct. All gravity comes and goes back to paradise. Now, There's a caveat to that too, though, Tim. Each and every planet has its own gravity too, right? So you have the gravity of paradise. You also have the gravity of the super universe, and the gravity of the local systems or planets, right? So you have three different types of gravity affecting us all the time.
Well, I was just kind of wondering, what I can use when that argument comes up, or if they try to. I'm not going to argue against them, but just when that comes up, we should be thinking about the eternal of paradise.
Yeah, we really should be.
Okay, thank you.
My wife and I watched the Stephen Hawkins movie. What was it?
Something for everything.
Yeah, the story of everything.
Story of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. We watched that this week, and I am never have been a Stephen Hawkins fan, but it was a very good movie, and even he said at the end, probably to appease his wife, that he acknowledged her concept of God. I think's the best way to say that. But to me, a scientist that does not take into account God as the cause, the first source and center of cause, then I think they're missing out completely. I really do. You're missing out the cause of everything, and that's what this movie was supposed to be about. So anyway. That's neither.
Well, he was humble about it too, and he did say, that his first thesis was totally inaccurate.
Wrong.
It was wrong. So.
We're humans. We make mistakes. Yeah. That's all there is to it.
Hi, Rodney.
Hi, Rodney.
Hey, Rodney.
Mention that you were here.
Hey, guys.
Well, that clicker's gone.
I'm huffing and puffing, but I finally made it.
Good deal.
Humidity's kind of high today, isn't it?
Oops.
Wrong one. Roger.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, but we not only have the gravity of Earth, then we have the gravity of our solar system, then we have the gravity of our local constellation, then we have the gravity of our universe, and it just keeps on going all the way.
Yeah, actually there's 7 different types, but the 3 major ones are paradise, the super universe, and our local planet. That's the 3 major ones. But all of them, I think there's altogether 7. If I could be incorrect of that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. So, and I can't rattle them off to you. I'm not that smart tonight. All right, let's keep going. Millie, would you take the next paragraph, please?
Yes, I can do that. When you talk about scientists not acknowledging God, tell me why they're seeking now the God particle.
Yeah, really?
Yeah, it's like...
To continue with the gravity types, the various planetary types of mortals vary in height, the average in Inhabited being a trifle under 7 feet. Some of the larger worlds are populated with beings who are only about 2 1/2 feet in height. Mortal stature ranges from here on up through the average height of the average size planet to around 10 feet on the smaller inhabited spheres. In Satania, there's only one race under 4 feet in height. 20% of the Satania inhabited worlds are peopled with mortals of the modified gravity types, occupying the larger and smaller planets.
So these are the variation beings, right? The smaller and the larger planets they're talking about here, right? It's interesting to find out that the average is a trifle under 7 feet, so we're actually below average, if you think about it. There's some people around 7 foot on our planet, but the average on our planet is a little bit less than 6 feet. So I find that kind of interesting. Actually, the old medical charts still have men at about 6 feet and women a little around 5. So it's kind of interesting.
I used to be 5'8". I'm not anymore.
Yeah, we all lose height. Y'all, I know this from, I was a chiropractor for so many years. The disc material in between your bones basically dries up as you get older. So as you lose that moisture, those discs get thinner and thinner, and as they do, you lose height. An average anywhere from 1 inch to 1.5 inches to even 2 inches by the time you hit about 70 or 80. So you do get shorter as you get older. Gravity's tough. Any way you look at it. Rodney, would you take the temperature beams, please? The temperature.
Yeah, after age of 50, gravity takes over.
Yeah, it does. Even these things.
So my apology, I just sat down and opened the book. Is it number 4?
Number 4, the temperature types.
Okay. The temperature types. It is possible to create living beings who can withstand temperatures both much higher and much lower than the life range of the Urantia races. There are 5 distinct orders of beings, as they are classified with reference to heat regulating mechanisms. In this scale, the Urantia races are number 3. 30% of Satania worlds are people with races of modified temperature types. 12% belong to the higher temperature ranges. 18% to the lower, as compared with Urantians, whose function in the mid-temperature group.
So we're about the mid-temperature group ourselves. So there's beings that can withstand heat more than us and cold more than us, both, right? Okay.
Then there's Rodney, who goes to live in Alaska.
That's right. He's one of the code temperature types, right?
You know, 60 below, you can adapt.
Yeah. I'd rather not, if you don't mind. Diane, would you take them?
5, the electric types. The electric, magnetic, and electronic behavior of the worlds varies greatly. There are 10 designs of mortal life variously fashioned to withstand the differential energy of the spheres. These 10 varieties also react in slightly different ways to the chemical rays of ordinary sunlight. But these slight physical variations in no way affect the intellectual or the spiritual life.
Okay, remember all these things don't affect the intellectual or spiritual life, right? With the exception of the non-breathers. The non-breathers normally do not get thought adjusters, okay? So they are candidates for spirit fusion, okay? So, but well, I probably said that wrong. They may get thought adjusters, they just can't fuse with them, right? Yet nobody caught me on that.
No, I did. I question it, actually.
Yeah. Question everything, please. Okay. Of the electric groupings of mortal life, almost 23% belong to class number 4, the Urantia type of existence. These types are distributed as follows. Number 1, 1%. Number 2, 2%. Number 3, 5%. Number 4, 23%. Number 5, 27%. Sorry. Number 6, 24%. Number 7, 8%. Number 8, 5%. Number 9, 3%. Number 10, 2%. And whole percentages. So that's the percentages of beings that are in the different classes, right? The electrical classes. So this is what I was talking about. When they talk about this, most all the beings probably fit in several of these groups, right? Okay.
Roger,
yeah.
As far as the numbers go, are the numbers referring to the numbers that we're reading here? Or I could say number 1, 1%.
The paragraph before says there are 10 designs of mortal life variously fashioned to withstand the differential energy of the spheres.
And that's
these 10 varieties.
Right.
That's the 10 they're talking about. I had to go back and read the previous paragraph. I would Rodney, that just went right over my head.
So,
yeah.
So there's more of number 5, 27%.
Yeah.
And where does it categorize us?
4. We're number 4.
Number 4, I see that,
Right.
okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Kind of in the middle there, right? All right. Tim, would you take the next one, the energizing types?
Number 6, the energizing types. Not all the worlds are alike in the manner of taking in energy. Not all inhabited worlds have an atmospheric ocean suited or respiratory exchange of gases, such as is present on Urantia. During the earlier and the later stages of many planets, beings of your present order could not exist, and when the respiratory factors of a planet are very high or low, or very low, but when all other
prerequisites.
Can't say that word.
Sorry.
To intelligent life are adequate. The life carriers often establish on such worlds a modified form of mortal existence. Beings who are competent to affect their light process exchanges directly by means of light energy and the first-hand power transmutations of the master physical controllers.
There's those master physical controllers again, right? Well, they get into everything, don't they? So basically what they're talking about is taking in energy, and what they're talking about here is respiration or exchanges of gas. You realize that when you breathe, you take in energy, you take in oxygen, right? And it takes out the, basically takes out carbon monoxide in your system, that sort of thing. It gives you energy. Along with eating, okay? They're going to talk about this in a little bit here, how some beings do not actually eat food. They get their energy processed directly through the processes of the master physical controllers or from their sun, right? Just like, you know, if you think about it, the plants take in all their energy through sunlight, right? And that's how they grow. And there's
photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis, that's right. And
so it says that their life processes exchanges directly by means of light energy.
That's right, light energy, and there's beings that do the same thing.
Are they plant-based
no,
beings instead of animal-based?
No, they're human-based beings, Millie, but they just obtain their energy from the light rather than from food, okay? Probably because the planet they inhabit is not capable of sustaining enough food for them to survive. So the life carriers modify them so that they can exist on a planet with very limited access to nutrition through food, so they do it a different way, you know.
But with a lot of light.
With a lot of light, probably. Yeah, probably. Okay, but don't forget, we can't discount the master physical controllers, can we? The master physical controllers are the ones that control all energy processes, any energy whatsoever. So if the master physical controllers decide to set up a universe that sustains itself through ultraviolet light or through X-rays, or there's dozens and dozens of different things that's coming in on us all the time, they can do that for these beings, right? So it never ceases to amaze me, all the different types of processes that are available. Okay, Millie, I think you're up.
Okay, there are 6 different types of animal and mortal nutrition. The subbreathers employ the first type of nutrition, the marine dwellers the second, the mid-breathers the third, as on Urantia. The super-breathers employ the fourth type of energy intake, and while the non-breathers utilize the fifth order of nutrition and energy. The 6th technique of energizing is limited to the midway creatures.
Isn't that interesting? The midway creatures has their own method, the 6th technique of energizing themselves. So they don't what? They don't eat, right? They don't drink, you know. So, and they're on this planet, right? So,
hey, Roger.
Yeah.
They're talking about energy again, and what exactly are they taking in?
They're talking about nutrition on this slide, Tim. In other words, eating food. Okay? So, but there's 6 different ways of taking in nutrition. you don't have to eat food to get your nutrition. You might get it through air, you might get it through the sunlight, you might get it through radiation, you know, it goes on and on and on. There's 6 different methods that you can get nutrition from. So you don't necessarily have to eat. Now, interesting thing, let me mention this while we're on this subject, is in your Morancha body, you still eat food. Okay? Remember, it mentions eating food, but that changes the higher you go up. So probably by the time you get to your spiritual body, food may not be necessary any longer, right? Might be a total different way to get nutrition by the time you get your spiritual body. But we're so used to eating, it's interesting that the hierarchy of the universe has decided to allow us to continue eating, doing something we're used to in our Morancha body, because if you think about it, the process of eating is as much social as it is nutritional, right? Because we like to eat in groups, we like to visit while we eat, and have supper together and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. Okay, let's keep going.
My turn.
Right. Yes.
And then I wonder that last sentence, if there are any obese midway creatures.
I kind of doubt it, Rodney. Probably the other types of energy intake are, I wouldn't think they would be as highly sensory surrounding as eating is. In other words, eating gives us this feeling of satisfaction. We enjoy doing it, you know. And it may be that the type of nutrition that the midwayers get has nothing to do with enjoyment of intake. In other words, they do it because they have to, right, to survive. So that could be wrong, you know.
Could be flowers.
Yeah. Could be.
Okay, number 7, the unnamed types. There are numerous additional physical variations in planetary life, but all of these differences are wholly matters of anatomical modification,
physiologic
differentiation, and electrochemical adjustment. Such distinctions do not concern the intellectual or the spiritual life.
So they just tweak the bodies of these beings to fit their environment, right? Basically, is what they're saying. And a lot of them are not even mentioned. That's what they call them, the unnamed type. Okay. Dear, would you take the world of the non-breathers?
Majority of inhabited planets are peoples with the breathing type of intelligent beings, but there are also orders of mortals who are able to live on the worlds with little or no air. Of the Arvanton inhabited worlds, this type amounts to less than 7%. In Nebadon, this percentage is less than 3%. In Alcitania, there are only 9 such worlds.
Okay, so we got 606 worlds in Satania, and there's only 9 of them I'm sorry. Yeah, 9 of them that are this way, that are non-breathing planets. Okay. There are so very few of the non-breather type of inhabited worlds in Satania because this more recently organized section of Norlationdex still abounds in meteoric space bodies, and worlds without a protective friction atmosphere are subject to incessant bombardment by these wanderers. Even some of the comets consist of meteor swarms, but as a rule are disruptive smaller bodies of matter. So if you do not have an atmosphere, the meteors that shower onto the planets become very dangerous because they don't break up in space, right? So these types of planets have to create an artificial electrical charge around the planet to help destroy these as they come in.
Isn't that what Tesla did?
That's what Tesla did,
yeah.
right, yeah. That was the whole concept behind Tesla. If Tesla would have got his way, we would have all been enjoying free electricity forever. You know? Okay, who's that? Okay, who's that?
Tim.
Tim?
Millions upon millions of meteorites. Well, no, that's wrong. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, millions upon millions of meteorites enter the atmosphere of Urantia daily, coming in at the rate of almost 200 miles a second. On the non-breathing worlds, the advanced races must do much to protect themselves from the meteor damage by making electrical installations which operate to consume or shunt the meteors. Great danger confronts them when they venture beyond these protected zones. These worlds are also subject to disastrous electrical storms of a natural unknown on Urantia. During such times of tremendous energy fluctuation, the inhabitants must take refuge in their special structures of protective insulation.
Okay, so think about this, y'all. They have to have this electrical field around the planet to keep them from getting bombarded constantly. But what I was thinking is this: early on, when they are evolving, how do you think they keep from getting killed by that?
That's what I was going to ask. In their primitive stage,
don't you think they probably took refuge in caves, more than likely?
Well, they had to have, huh?
Yeah, they would have to keep safe, right? So these probably were a whole planet of cave dwellers for thousands and thousands of years till they got their technology to the point where they could protect themselves to come out of the caves. Wouldn't you think?
That would be a horrible way to live.
It would be. But you couldn't live in the trees like we did, you know, in our early history, because that would be unsafe, right? All right.
So, hey, Roger.
Yeah.
This entire paper 49, the Inhabited Worlds, are they all the entire paper just part of the 606 worlds that they're talking about, the 606 worlds, basically?
Yeah, they're talking about the 606 worlds, but it also includes the 36 worlds that's just about ready to be inhabited, and it also includes the 200 and something worlds that they said within the next few million years will be ready for inhabited. So remember, there's going to be eventually be 1,000 worlds in Satania.
Right, but in this time frame, we're just talking about the 606. What about the 619?
It's 619 actually, Tim. Because,
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Roger?
Yeah.
I'm under the impression, though, that all mortals in all the super universes are similar to this.
Uh-huh. That's true. They are, Rodney. All mortals are similar to this. So this is not just Satania. They're explaining it's Satania, but there's variations of this, I'm sure. But most of the local universes are the same way.
And what I mean is, of course, the percentages would be different for other universes.
Yeah, that would be true. They may have a higher percentage of one over another, right? Okay. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. Life on the worlds of the non-breathers is radically different from what it is on Urantia. The non-breathers do not eat food or drink water, as do the Urantia races. The reactions of the nervous system, the heat-regulating mechanism, and the metabolism of these specialized peoples are radically different from such functions of Urantia mortals. Almost every act of living, aside from reproduction, differs, and even the methods of procreation are somewhat different.
Okay, so this is a whole race. They do not eat food or drink water. Okay? Interesting part of this is the next paragraph. So let's go on to the next paragraph here.
On the non-breathing worlds, the animal species are radically unlike those found on the atmospheric planets. The non-breathing plan of life varies from the technique of existence on an atmospheric world. Even in survival, their peoples differ, being candidates for spirit fusion. Nevertheless, these beings enjoy life and carry forward the activities of the realm with the same relative trials and joys that are experienced by the mortals living on atmospheric worlds. In mind and character, the non-breathers do not differ from other mortal types.
Okay, so they're basically because of the way they're made or created, they are candidates for spirit fusion rather than adjuster fusion. And an interesting part of this is that there's a planet close to us just like this. Okay, they're going to take. All right, I cheated there a little bit, didn't I? Go ahead. Here.
You would be more than interested in the planetary conflict with this type of mortal because such a race of beings inhabits a sphere in close proximity to Urantia.
So there's a world that's close to us that this is the case. It's a non-breathing world. They don't eat, they don't drink, and they're candidates for spirit fusion.
So whose tower went flat?
Pardon me?
Whose tower just went flat?
Oh.
Yeah, I heard it too. Sounded like Millie.
Really getting a glass of water.
All right.
You know, you never know. It could be Venus. I doubt it's that close.
I doubt it's that close, but it's, you know, it must be in close proximity or they wouldn't mention
Or
it.
it could be a moon around Jupiter.
You never know. You really don't. You know. Okay, 4. Evolutionary world creatures. There are great differences between the mortals of the different worlds, even among those belonging to the same intellectual and physical types. But all mortals of will dignity are erect animals, bipeds. Okay, so this tells us all mortals throughout all the universes are bipeds. In other words, they stand erect. They don't walk around on 4 feet or hands.
Well, they have 2 feet, and they're not insects.
That's right. That's right. That's good to know, isn't it? You know. So
Yeah, it's good to know.
when you start imagining the worlds that's out there, don't start thinking that everybody's got 8 feet or that sort of thing, you know. All right. Tim, would you take the next one, please?
There are 6 basic evolutionary races. 3 primary, red, yellow, and blue, and 3 secondary, orange, green, and indigo. Most inhabited worlds have all of these races, but many of the 3 brain planets harbor only the 3 primary types. Some local systems also have only these 3 races.
I find this interesting because in the book it mentions the most advanced and intelligent races to start out were the red, yellow, and blue race, right? And the orange, green, and indigo were a little bit more backwards than the red, yellow, and blue. Of course, everything is mixed now to the point that's not the case anymore. You know, that's part of the reason that Adam and Eve can't come to mix the violet blood with the races to what? Upstep them, right? So once we start intermarrying, the red men married the white man, the yellow men married the black men, the indigo, the green and the orange disappeared. Basically, they were pretty much wiped out. But as their blood mixed, we get a different hues of color, right? And eventually, that's how we eventually end up having a kind of a brown race.
Hey Roger, when they say 3-brain, they're talking about us, right?
No, we're only 2-brained. There's a whole group of beings that are 3-brained that's more intelligent than we are. Okay?
Okay, so
We're just 2-brained. We got a higher brain and a lower brain.
Our right and left brain.
no, plus the bottom part.
No, it's an upper and lower the lower brain is the autonomic nervous system, right? And the higher brain is the part that takes care of the intelligence and the decision process. Now, they don't tell us exactly how the three brains are divided up, but we know we have an upper brain and a lower brain, and the lower brain takes care of all the automatic stuff like breathing, that kind of stuff, you know, keep us going. Where the upper brain is the one we think, feel, touchy-feely brain, right? Okay, but we're going to talk about this a little bit more.
But hey, Roger.
Yeah.
When they say red and yellow, they're talking about the Indian and the Asian, and then when they say blue, the white man.
The blue
and
is,
the orange and green, I'm confused, but the indigo is the black man. But what about the orange and green?
the orange and the green is the Mediterranean area, okay, and the orange was part of that too. If I remember correctly, it was around Spain, that area in there, and they eventually migrated down into Africa, which I think that's where they disappeared. Most of them got killed off. But Egypt, Africa, that sort of thing. But the indigo was the black man, right? And most of them ended up in Africa. But the green man exists today. We don't call them green men anymore, but that is mostly the men and women that are of Mediterranean heritage. If you notice, a lot of times people from the Mediterranean have a tinge of kind of olive green skin. You know, it doesn't look real green, but it's kind of an olive skin color. And the blue man mixed with the yellow and the red so much that, and eventually ended up becoming the white man, right?
So what was the red and yellow?
The red is the Indian. Yellow is Asians.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Roger, I really did thought that I read that on Urantia, the orange and green man were destroyed.
They were. Well, a large number of them. The remainder of them the green were the Mediterranean type people.
Okay.
Okay. But almost all the orange were kind of backward, and they got killed off first, basically. You know, pretty quickly. So, all right. And when you say blue man, you can't think of a Smurf. You know, the little blue guy. Yeah, that's not what they're talking about. They're talking about a hue of skin color. You know how because whiter people, because of the veins and that sort of thing, they sometimes have a tinge of a color blue because their veins show through and things. So, so that's the way you have to think of it.
So they're talking about the strain?
The strain of blue, right. Right. Okay. And that's basically disappeared into the white culture, so. All right. So now we're all mixed together, pretty much. We're all pretty close to getting Heinz 57. We have some fairly pure strains left. The Asians still have some fairly pure strains. Some of the Indians, they're still around. The closest to the original red man is probably the Eskimo, okay? And in Africa, there's still many indigo strains, black, you know, so. Okay, who's up next? I think Millie's up. Millie, are you up next?
Yes. The average special physical sense endowment of human beings is 12, though the special sense of the three-brain mortals are extended slightly beyond those of the one and two-brain types. They can see and hear considerably more than the Urantia races.
You know, okay, so you think about the three-brain can see and hear more. They can probably see more celestial beings, even in the human form, than we can. So they may be able to recognize midwayers, right? If they have extended sight, and they may be able to hear them too. So we don't.
So once again, Roger, these are human beings in just different planets.
They're human beings in different planets. Now keep in mind, these 1, 2, and 3 brain differences disappear completely when you get to the mansion worlds. Okay?
So we would not have any three brains here because we're two brains?
We're 2 brain, yeah.
So our whole planet is populated with 2 brains?
Our whole planet is populated with 2 brains.
So that does not intermix when you mate or anything?
No. If we had any 3 brain people, they would probably have extrasensory perception, things like that. You know, like
Some people
Adam
do.
and Eve. Well, more like Adam and Eve. You know, Adam and Eve could communicate.
500 miles with the children.
Yeah, with the children. So, you know, it would probably be more along that line than anything else. But there's no three brain on this planet that we know of. At least they don't tell us about it anyway. Okay, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Sure, Roger. Young are usually born singly, multiple births being the exception, and the family life is fairly uniform on all types of planets. Sex equality prevails on all advanced worlds. Male and female are equal in mind, endowment, and spiritual status. We do not regard a planet as having emerged from barbarism so long as one sex seeks to tyrannize over the other. This feature of creature experience is always greatly improved after the arrival of a material son and daughter.
And who's material son and daughter? Adam and Eve, right? Very important statement here. We do not regard the planet as having emerged from barbarism, right? As long as one seeks to tyrannize over the other. So we still have some major religions out here that still believe that, don't they? Okay.
I have that particular sentence highlighted from the last time I read this.
Yeah.
What's barbarism? What's that mean, Roger?
Barbarism, in other words, we haven't advanced past our animalistic tendencies. That we're barbaristic, in other words, we're not an advanced society at all if we are still in barbarism.
But even some of the planets I remember reading in government on
A neighboring planet.
they have mentioned that even though they're very highly advanced in many areas, that there's a certain portion of that planet that is not. They still experience barbarism.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, we have it on this planet, that's for sure.
Well, we certainly do.
Yeah.
Just turn on the news and you'll see the barbarians coming right out of the woodwork.
That's right. There's so much barbarism on the. I think there's more barbarism than there is advanced society on this planet. But the thing I wanted to point out too on this is it says sex equality prevails on all advanced worlds. Male and female are equal in mind endowment and spiritual status. So if you're a man and you think a woman is not equal in mind and spirit as you are, wake up. You're wrong. They are. You know. And the whole universe does not consider us civilized until we accept that fact and treat women equal with men.
Or treat men equal.
Or men equal with women, because there are planets where women are dominant, right? So it works both ways. But the other thing it says here is this is greatly improved after the arrival of material son and daughter. What's material son and daughter? That's Adam and Eve, right? And we know that our Adam and Eve defaulted in their mission. So if we would have gotten more of the Adam and Eve blood into our society and they did their mission that they were sent here to do, we would not have as much barbarism as we do on this planet, right? Of course, if everything went well with Adam and Eve, we may not have gotten Jesus as our bestowal son either, because he took his, he took.
It would have been okay.
It would have been okay, but he did take our planet because we had some issues, right? And which is kind of interesting. So it works both ways. Go ahead.
Seasons and temperature variations occur on all sun-lighted and sun-heated planets. Agriculture is universal on all atmospheric worlds. Tilling the soil is the one pursuit that is common to the advancing races of all such planets.
So everybody's farmers throughout the universe, right? Tilling the soil. The ones that eat food, that's right. Mortals all have the same general struggles with microscopic foes in their early days, such as you now experience on Urantia, though perhaps not so extensive. That's because we're an experimental planet, right? The length of life varies on the different planets from 25 years on the primitive worlds to near 500 on the more advanced and older spheres. Now, why would it be so low on the primitive? More things to kill you, right? Bugs, disease, animals, war, everything, right? On the more advanced worlds, have solved all their problems with microscopic foes, diseases, things like that. So the life expectancy gets longer and longer, right? And that's eventually what will happen on this planet. We'll start growing in years as we get more advanced and learn how to fix ourselves, right? All right.
I would say know how to take care of ourselves.
Know how to take care of
Yeah.
ourselves, that's right. Tim, would you take the next one?
Human beings are gregarious, both tribal and racial.
Gregarious. They're boastful, in other words. Tim.
They're boastful?
Yeah, they're boastful or outgoing or, you know.
Friendly.
Friendly, that's right.
Okay, so they're basically friendly.
Yeah.
Sociable.
Sociable, they're, yeah,
Incorporating everybody.
that's right.
Okay, these groups' segregations are inherent in their origin and construction. Such tendencies can be modified only by advancing civilization and by gradual spiritualization. The social, economic, and governmental problems of the inhabited worlds vary in accordance with the age of the planets and the degree to which they have been influenced by the successive sojourns of these divine sons.
Okay, so we've only had one divine son, right? And that's Jesus. The other son that we've had is Adam and Eve, right? We also had a Lenaunendeck son that defaulted, so it didn't do us any good, did it? So the sons they're talking about here are the magisterial sons and eventually the Trinity teacher sons, okay? And we were just fortunate that we had the Creator Son as our...
Hey, Roger.
Yeah.
So when they say divine sons, it's creator sons.
Not always Creator sons. Magisterial sons can do a bestowal also,
Okay.
Tim. So it can be a Creator son or a magisterial son.
Would that be the Avenals?
Huh?
The Avenals of the magisterial sons?
Yeah, Avenals. That's right.
Okay, just one more question.
Yeah.
How exactly did Jesus terminate the Lucifer rebellion?
When he came to earth, he proved his sovereignty of the universe. And that literally ended the Lucifer rebellion. Now remember, the Lucifer rebellion is listed as this: Gabriel versus Lucifer. Okay? It's not Michael versus Lucifer. Gabriel is the chief executive of our local Jesus' creation, right? So anything having to do with rebellion is against Gabriel because he's the chief executive, and that's why it's listed that way with the Ancients of Days.
But did it also have something to do with revealing the Father to mankind too?
It does. It does. But
basically it was for the sovereignty of his local, to gain sovereignty of his local universe.
It was to gain sovereignty of his local universe. This is his seventh and final bestowal. Now, keep in mind that all Creator sons have to go through the 7 bestowals, just like Jesus did. Okay? So every Creator son in every local universe has to bestow himself in 7 different forms to prove his sovereignty, and at that point they become master sons and are sovereigns of their universe. Up to that point, they are not full sovereigns of their universe. The universe is really in control by the Ancients of Days. Okay? But once they prove their sovereignty, Jesus, or Michael, whichever you want to call him, is our concept of God. He really is. Okay? Not God the Father, but God of the universe. Alright?
But you can also call him the Universe Father, correct?
You can call him the Universe Father, yes.
Okay, thank you, Roger.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going. I think Millie's up again, isn't she?
Okay. Mind is the bestowal of the infinite spirit and functions quite the same in diverse environments. The mind of mortals is akin, regardless of certain structural and chemical differences which characterize the physical nature of the will creatures of the local systems. Regardless of personal or physical planetary differences, the mental life of all these various orders of mortals is very similar, and their immediate careers after death are very much alike.
Many things change after death, right? Because we all get these Morancha bodies, regardless of what your background is, right? The only exception to that is those beings that are not fusion candidates. That's the only difference, right? Oh, but mind itself, what makes us thinking beings, it comes from the infinite spirit, so that is the same throughout all the planets, all the local universes, right? Because it's a bestowal of the infinite spirit, the third source and center. Not
so, hey, Roger, when they say that all mind is bestowed by the infinite spirit,
yeah.
Do they tune into the infinite spirit? I don't understand.
Well, it comes through the creative mother spirit, but it actually originates in the infinite spirit. So all beings, mind, just like your thought adjuster comes directly from God the Father, your mind, that concept of makes who you are in your brain, it comes from the infinite, the third source and center. Just like your spirit comes from the sun. Okay? That answer your question?
Well, I understand that the universal Father bestows personality, then, you know, the eternal Son is the spiritual aspect, and then the infinite spirit is the bestower of mind.
That's right.
And when basically he does that, not she, because we're talking about a creator mother spirit, just basically means that I guess you've got mind, but I'm trying to figure out, what do I do with it?
What do you do? Mind?
Yes, you know, like, what function does it play? Does that allow me to feel, to experience the presence of God?
You water it and make it grow with good spiritual concepts. Right?
So what do I do with it?
You use ice tea if you don't have water, right? Okay, with the mind, seriously, the best thing you can do with your mind is continue learning everything in this life that you can about your spiritual life to come. People miss out on this world. I can't, you know, I was thinking this today. I was working on, I think it was paper 51, and something came to mind while I was doing that, and that is, you know, really, when it comes down to it, what we do on Wednesday night, when we teach this book and we study this book together, we're getting a jump on our Morancha life, right? What's really ridiculous is all these people are going to show up on the mansion worlds without any of this knowledge, and they have to start from scratch. So are they going to spend their first 100 years on the first mansion world learning what they should have learned here? You know, when you think about it, that's probably the case, okay? You have such an advantage with this revelation because it has been revealed to you all the keys of the universe, really, that you really need. And what a blessing. It's a blessing beyond human imagination. It really is. And that's why I keep saying the importance of what we do here, the things we do on Wednesday night, it's not for us. It's for everybody, right?
That's right.
If one person goes out and listens to this message online, we put all these messages online. There's 146 of these 2-hour meetings online right now. And if somebody stumbles across them and they start to benefit from this, what a blessing for them, right? That's why we do this. It's not for us. And please remember, when I teach on Wednesday night, I'm no expert. I know this book very well. But this is my interpretation. I can be wrong, right? It could be totally different than what I tell you. This is my comprehension of what I've learned, right? But you can read the book and come up with a totally different interpretation, and that's fine, right? But the point is, you indoctrinate yourself to the truth and start to learn it, you know? And that's why we do this. It really is.
And hey, Roger, when they say the fifth epochal revelation translation, when they say the word epical, it just means a revelation for the entire planet Urantia.
It does. It means a revelation from the entire planet. Just like Jesus was the fourth epical revelation. So we needed to pay attention to him, right? This is the fifth epical revelation. So we need to pay attention to it, right?
Because they've tried 5 times already.
This is the fifth attempt to enlighten us. This is, and that's the correct word. It's an enlightening experience to digest the information in this book.
And what does the word enlightening mean? To reveal wisdom?
To reveal wisdom. That's right.
An epoch is a period of time.
Epical is,
so
yeah.
Jesus
Yeah.
covered a particular period of time, and this fifth revelation will cover a different period of time, a different epoch.
Right.
Is that right?
That's right. That's correct. This should last us at least a few thousand years. People don't realize, people are going to be reading this book, maybe not in book form, maybe in electronic form, but they'll be reading this book for the next 2,000-3,000 years, at least until the next epical revelation comes along. Right?
Yes.
So this is our epical revelation. So take it in, digest it, make it your own. You know, however you can do that. So.
You know, in theory, could this possibly be the fifth epical revelation? Could this possibly be Jesus returning to the earth as he really was? And because when you're reading what the midwares revealed about Jesus, we're hearing the absolute truth.
Right.
You know, so in a way, it's kind of a, you know, it's the truth about the real truth about Jesus.
It's the revelation of Jesus.
It's
to
the
us.
revelation of Jesus.
Yeah,
right?
not, you know, we didn't have the benefit of being able to watch him and follow him around, but this is
Not that many people really did.
Yeah, but this
Yeah.
is the revelation of most of what he taught while he was on the planet, and the rest of it is in the importance of why he's teaching us this, right? So it's just mind-boggling when you think about this. If you think about this and you can digest this, a smart human being would spend every moment of their extra time digesting this. They really will. Because when you hit the mansion worlds, you're going to be ready, right? You're going to be ready. You won't need that intermediate classes that so many of us is going to be in, right? So,
But
okay.
hey, Roger, when you say make it your own, what are some of the things to look out for? For instance, like channeling, or you have people claiming that they talk to me.
When anybody tells me something outside of what's in this book, I tend to shun it, because I know this is truth. I know this because I've studied it for over 40 years now.
Same here.
And I know that it's become part of me, and I don't doubt anything in it. Okay.
Me neither.
So that's why I say make it your own, and you only get that understanding by studying it over and over and over and over again. Let's keep moving. We're getting bogged down here. Okay, who's up?
I think I'm.
I think you are too, Rodney. Oh, we already did this. Let me go to the next one, Rodney.
Okay, but mortal mind without immortal spirit cannot survive. The mind of man is mortal. Only the bestowed spirit is immortal. Survival is dependent on spiritualization by the ministry of the adjuster, on the birth and evolution of the immortal soul. At least there must not have developed an antagonism towards the adjuster's mission of effecting the spiritual transformation of the material mind.
Okay, so we have all three parts there, don't we? We have the mind, which comes from the infinite spirit. We have the spirit, which comes from where? The infinite Son, right? And
The Eternal Son, you mean?
the eternal Son, I mean, yeah. And the adjuster, which comes from the Father, right? When the adjuster arrives, we have the birth of the soul. We learned that a couple weeks ago, right? At about 5.5 years old. Okay? And then it goes on to tell us, as long as there has not developed an antagonism towards the adjuster's mission. Why would that be? Because if you're antagonistic with God or your adjuster, you are not open to what? Spiritualizing your mind.
What does the word antagonism mean?
Fighting with them. constantly, or being
Okay.
against them constantly.
Well,
Right?
probably a feeling of not needing anyone
Not
yourself.
needing- that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not being yourself?
Of not needing
Anyone but yourself.
but yourself.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
Yeah.
Not needing anybody,
Yeah.
but yeah. But
It's
yourself.
that egotism, right? There's that ego comes back again, right? All right. All right. Next.
5. The planetary series of mortals. It will be somewhat difficult to make an adequate portrayal of the planetary series of mortals because you know so little about them and because there are so many variations. Mortal creatures may, however, be studied from numerous viewpoints, among which are the following. 1. Adjustment to planetary environment. 2. Brain type series. 3. Spirit reception series. 4. Planetary mortal epics. 5. Creature kinship serials. 6. Adjuster fusion series. 7. Techniques of terrestrial escape.
Okay, so this is the variations they're talking about, that we can be divided into these 7 different things. We're going to talk about each one of these in this next section. Okay, so let's keep going. The inhabited spheres of the 7 superuniverses are peopled with mortals who simultaneously classify in some one or more categories of each of these 7 generalized classes of evolutionary creature life. But even these general classifications make no provisions for such beings as midsiniders, nor for certain other forms of intelligent life. The inhabited worlds as they have been presented in these narratives are peopled with evolutionary mortal creatures, but there are other life forms, which include the midsiniders, right? They don't tell us a lot about them. But we know that there's other types of beings out there in the 7 superuniverses that are not like us as mortals. Okay?
Mid-Sniders are in between
In between variations could be many,
human and angel.
yeah, it could be many, many different things that they don't.
Well, those little green men.
Yeah, could be. All right, Tim, would you take the next one?
1. Adjustment of planetary environment. There are 3 general groups of inhabited worlds. From the standpoint of the adjustment of creature life to the planetary environment, the normal adjustment group, the radical
Yeah.
adjustment group, and the experimental
Experimental group. We fit into the experimental group, don't we? Because we're an experimental planet. All right. All right, Billy, would you take the next one?
Normal adjustments to planetary conditions follow the general physical pattern previously considered. The worlds of the non-breathers typify the radical or extreme adjustment, but other types are also included in this group. Experimental worlds are usually ideally adapted to the typical life forms, and on these decimal planets, the life carriers attempt to produce beneficial variations in standard life design. Since your world is an experimental planet, it differs markedly from its sister spheres in Satania. Many forms of life have appeared on Urantia that are not found elsewhere. Likewise, are many common species absent from your planet.
Makes you wonder, is some of the people not exactly like anybody else in the other worlds too, right?
Yeah, go back. The last thing that you read, there are other life forms.
Right.
Are they not bipeds, erect?
No, they're talking about not being human, Millie. So they probably classified as either midsiniders or part of the celestial organization of the universe, one of the two. You know, because when you think about a mechanical physical controller, he may not look like a normal human by any stretch of the imagination, you know. So they're talking about variations of life throughout the universe that are not considered mortal, right? That's what we're talking about here. They're outside the mortal range. Now, what would be outside the mortal range? That would be a midsinider, or that would be a a guardian angel or a being that was created for a specific purpose. These beings are not mortals, right? They're created for a specific purpose. So that's what they're talking about. There's many, many life forms that they don't even tell us about. There's probably millions of them that we will discover as we go through the universe.
Thank you.
Okay. I think that's it on that paragraph. Okay. I think
In the universe of Nebadon, all the life modification worlds are serially linked together and constitute a special domain of universe affairs which is given attention by designated administrators. And all of these experiential worlds are periodically inspected by a corps of universe directors whose chief is the veteran finaliter known in Satania as Tabamantia.
Okay, why would they pick Tabamantia as the inspector? Because Tabamantia came from an experimental planet. He or she, whatever it is, also was involved in the very first rebellion in the universe, okay, and was true through that first rebellion. So Tabamantia is a rebellion-tested being, okay, and he or she is basically the chief finaliter that's put in charge of inspecting all these worlds to make sure that they're administered properly. Okay? So we're not just out here in the middle of nowhere and nobody knows we're here, right? People like to think that, but that's not really the case. Okay, dear, would you take 2?
2. Brain type series. The one physical uniformity of mortals is the brain and nervous system. Nevertheless, there are 3 basic organizations of the brain mechanism: the 1, the 2, and the 3 brain types. Urantians are of the 2 brain types somewhat more imaginative, adventurous, and philosophical than the 1 brain mortals, but somewhat less spiritual, ethical, and worshipful than the 3 brain orders. These brain differences characterize even the pre-human animal existences.
Okay, so this was the case even before, as we were evolving, right? Okay, so the 3 brains advantage is the fact that they are more spiritual, ethical, and worshipful than we are. Okay, that's the big difference. Okay, from the 2 hemisphere type of the Urantia cerebral cortex, you can, by analogy, grasp something of the 1 brain type. The 3rd brain of the 3 brain order is best conceived as an involvement of your lower or rudimentary form of brain. This is the hindbrain. It's in the back of the head. Do I have my brain here that I could show you?
I think it's in the garage.
Oh, is it? Okay. I can't do that then. Okay. I lost my place.
Rudimentary form of brain,
which is developed to the point where it functions chiefly in control of physical activities. It's back here in the back of your head. Okay? Leaving the 2 superior brains free for higher engagement, one for intellectual function and the other for spiritual counterparting activities of the thought adjuster. So if you think of the 2 sides of your brain, one of them is for your intellectual or your smart thinking, right? The other one is what the thought adjuster works on to try to spiritualize your mind, right? The hindbrain or the lower brain.
That's 3 brains that you're talking about.
Well, it's really not. It's just 2 hemispheres.
2 hemispheres.
Okay. The lower brain is the autonomic nervous system. Okay. That's why if you get hit in the back of the head near the end of the skull, it'll kill you because it will stop the autonomic nervous system and you die, right? Breaks your neck, anything like that, that'll happen, okay? But the upper brain, both hemispheres, basically is for your intellectual, your thinking, things like that, and your spiritualization, right? Okay, Tim, would you take the next one?
While the terrestrial attainments of the 1 brain races are slightly limited, in comparison with the two-brain orders. The older planets of the three-brain group exhibit civilizations that would astound Eurasians, and which would somewhat shame yours by comparison. In mechanical development and material civilization, even in intellectual progress, the two-brain mortal worlds are able to equal the three-brain spheres, but in the higher control of mind and development of intellectual and spiritual reciprocation,
Yes.
you are somewhat inferior.
Well, puts it right on the line, don't they?
Very
Okay, so,
insulted again.
yeah, I think we've been insulted again.
What's that word mean,
That was a
Rhonda?
three-brainer that
Reciprocation.
said that.
You are somewhat inferior. meaning you're
Reciprocation,
lower?
yeah, it's communication with the thought adjuster. Spiritual reciprocation, they're talking about communication with the thought adjuster. Because the three brains are more spiritual, it is easier for them to communicate with the thought adjuster. That's why the higher or the three brain types of beings skip over many of the mansion worlds and sometimes end up going to the system capitals without having to go to the mansion world, because they're able to communicate with the thought adjuster much easier. Okay, so but it says here that the civilizations would astound us.
Wouldn't life be much more, certainly more rapid in reaching paradise if we were all three-brainers?
Yes,
I mean-
but you have to think about the benefits of having one and two brainers too. By coming up to a world that's a one brain or a two brain being, you gain experience as a lower form of animal or a lower form of life, which the three brainers will not experience that same thing because they're higher intelligence, right? So we will go through all the barbarianism of our planet, you know, see all the things that goes wrong here and things like that. That's part of our experience, which makes us better suited for some jobs out in the universe. When we go out to planets that's just starting up and things like that, if they assign us to planets like that, we've already experienced barbarianism. We've already experienced stupidity. So we know what to expect, where a three-brain being may not have that experience and not have that experience to relate to when they go out. So there's a benefit in everything, really. So you have to look at the good and the bad. It's kind of the way we had it with our Creator Son coming to the planet. We got a benefit that other planets will never have, right?
Yeah, we killed him.
Yeah, and we killed him because that's how smart we are, right? Maybe you should have gone to a three-brainer. Okay.
Roger, does our Morancha body have a brain?
Yes, it does. It has a physical structure, so we would assume it has a brain. And it talks about our brain and the or our ability when we get to the Morancha worlds to remember things and learn things much quicker. You know, we hear it one time and we got it type thing, you know. So I look forward to that. Instead of having to read the Urantia book 400 times, you can just read it once, right? All right.
Okay, all such comparative estimates concerning the intellectual progress or spiritual attainments of any world or group of worlds should, in fairness, recognize planetary age. Much, very much, depends on age, the help of the biologic uplifters, and the subsequent mission of the various orders of the divine sons.
Okay, so it depends on how old our planet is, and the biological uplifters are who? Adam and Eve, right? How much blood you got of them. And then the subsequent missions of the various orders of the divine sons, and we know we've only had one order of divine son, and that was Jesus, right? Now, I hate to say that because really Melchizedek is a divine son, and Calagasta was a divine son, and Adam and Eve were divine sons, but they're not in the same order of Creator Son, right? And the sons to come, the Magisterial, the Anomals, and the Daniels, which will be the Trinity Teacher sons, right? Okay. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Okay, while the three-brained peoples are capable of a slightly higher planetary evolution than either the one or two-brained orders, all have the same type of life plasm and carry on planetary activities in very similar ways, much as do human beings on Urantia. These three types of mortals are distributed throughout the worlds of the local systems. In the majority of cases, planetary conditions had very little to do with the decisions of the life carriers to protect these varied orders of mortals from the different worlds. It is a prerogative of the life carriers thus to plan and execute.
So it's really up to life carriers whether they set up a world with 1, 2, or 3 brain individuals, right? And this being an experimental planet, they probably had a reason they decided to make us 2 brain, because they were trying to tweak the 2 brain characteristics and make us better, right? So, if you wonder why are we the way we are, that's probably why. Okay?
These 3 orders stand on an equal footing in the ascension career. Each must traverse the same intellectual scale of development, and each must master the same spiritual test of progression. The system administration and the constellation over-control of these different worlds are uniformly free from discrimination. Even the regimes of the planetary princes are identical.
Okay, so it's equal throughout the system, right? Okay, Spirit Reception Series. There are 3 groups of mind design as related to contact with spirit affairs. This classification does not refer to the 1, 2, and 3 brain orders of mortals. It refers primarily to gland chemistry, more particular to the organization of certain glands comparable to the pituitary bodies. Y'all know what a pituitary body is? It's this little thing about the size of a grape or a walnut that's inside the hemispheres of your brain.
The pituitary gland?
Yeah, pituitary. Yeah. So what they're talking about here is the chemistry of these glands. Okay, pituitary. I wish I would have made a picture of this so y'all could see it, but I didn't think about it. The races on some worlds have 1 gland, on others 2, as do Urantians. We got 2, there's 1 on each side. Okay? While on other spheres, the races have 3 of these unique bodies. The inherent imagination and spiritual receptivity is definitely influenced by this differential chemical endowment. Because they have more than 2, probably the 3 brains have more spiritual, in other words, the chemistry is different, so they're more spiritually receptive.
Hey Roger, well it says they use the word bodies, they're talking about their brains?
No, they're talking about the gland itself.
Okay, the gland itself, the pituitary gland.
Right, right.
They're referred to as a body.
It's comparable to the pituitary bodies.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a gland, and it's probably in the same place as the pituitary. It may be called something totally different on other type of beings, but it's basically a gland, just like the pituitary is.
Okay,
So, Roger,
Yeah.
this gland, without it, you would not be so spiritual.
Yeah, you wouldn't. You know.
So spiritualization
Makes you wonder if that gland is malfunctioning.
Yeah.
That's why we get so many people that are antisocial, you know, and become criminals and things like that because of the malfunction of the pituitary gland. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It sounds to me like spiritualization is dependent on this gland for material being.
Yeah, it does to me too.
Well, they say
Almost like it's an antenna.
I wouldn't say more like an antenna. I think it would be the chemical part. It's an electrochemical substance that helps the adjuster to communicate with the physical aspects of the brain. That's what I would think.
As a chiropractor, do you have a way to make a pituitary gland more healthy?
Yeah, you can do it through drugs. You can. I mean, you can.
oh, good.
You can treat the pituitary just like you do any other organ in the body. You know, the way that antidepressants work for people that are depressed as it increases the synapses firing in certain parts of the brain. You know, it helps the synapses. So it gives you a feeling, it's supposed to give you a feeling of euphoria. In other words, makes you feel better. Okay, but it's just a chemical that increases certain lack of a chemical in the brain itself, and it helps depression. Some people it works and some people it doesn't.
Does it release dopamine?
Sometimes, yeah, some of them release dopamine.
That's the feel-good
It's the feel-good
stuff.
Yeah,
Chemicals.
yeah. And other types of antidepressants just basically helps take off that edge, and it gets you out of that depressed mood. Okay.
As a chiropractor, is there something that a chiropractor can do to increase the health of the pituitary?
Yes, you can adjust the upper cervical spine, and it keeps basically the upper cervical spine functioning properly. You know, people don't realize all the cranial nerves comes out of the neck, okay, in the lower head, and that affects everything to do with your face, your taste, your sight, everything. Okay, so by getting adjusted on a regular basis, it keeps the spine functioning properly. That's all it's supposed to do. It allows the body to heal itself. That's what chiropractic.
You can also practice yoga, Millie.
Yeah, you can practice it. There's a lot of things.
Tai Chi.
Tai Chi. Exercise helps that too. There's a lot of things that helps it out. But
Roger's massage chair.
yeah. But let me say this. Okay, being a chiropractor for 20 years, I can tell you that certain things in life, your body starts to malfunction. There's a place for medicine just like there is chiropractic. When your body malfunctions and you need certain things, you have to have those things that help improve yourself. It'd be like a diabetic not taking his insulin. Okay, that's a good example. If you have to have insulin, you need to take it on a regular basis like you're supposed to, right? But there's things like that. There's some drugs too. People are born with malfunctioning immune systems and things like that. I am a prime example of that. I got in trouble in the Navy with some stuff, and you know, sometimes you have to take drugs to stay healthy, you know, and good chiropractors will tell you there's a place for everything in medicine, chiropractic, massage, all of it. So everything's got its place, including nutrition and massage and the whole 9 yards. So anyway, that's my chiropractic speech for today. All right, let's keep going. Who's up? I think you are. Did you just read, Rodney?
I believe I did just read.
Oh, really?
Okay, I think you got to read.
Oh, I left the planet. Of the spirit reception type, 65% are of the second group, like the Urantia races. 12% are of the first type, naturally less receptive, while 23% are more spiritually inclined during terrestrial life. But such distinctions do not survive natural death. All of these racial differences pertain only to the life in the flesh.
Okay, so when you go on, those differences are not there any longer, right? When you get to the mansion world.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
This is a stupid question.
That's right. There's no such thing as a stupid
This is a stupid question. For the people that are 2.5 feet tall, do they get...
That's a stupid... No, I'm joking.
Do they get the same size Morancha bodies? I mean, do we all have like a uniform body so that nobody's 2.5 feet tall? We're all...
Like
nobody's... Huh?
Yeah, like Ewoks.
Ewoks.
Everybody will have the same type body. You know, William Sadler had a speech once where he said it's probably like this.
Oh, it's gross.
It's probably like they have all these Morancha blank bodies. In other words, they're just shells, and they come off an assembly line, they put you in this thing, and they plug you into it, you know. But basically, when they plug you into it, the body starts to take form of the person who's been plugged into it, right? But when they come off the assembly line, they're probably blanks, you know. So they just plug you in. Now that's his example of,
yeah, I remember reading
of that. It could be anything, nothing like that, you know. But basically, when we get our Morancha bodies, they're closely being all the same, and they take on the personality of the person that inhabits them.
So
right?
we wouldn't actually know where they came from. I mean,
We wouldn't know where
yeah.
they came from. If they were 2 foot, 8 foot, whatever,
Yeah.
they'll probably all be around 8 foot tall, you know,
Yeah.
when we get there. So, okay, let's keep going. I think I'm up, right? Planetary mortal epochs. This classification recognizes the succession of temporal dispensations as they affect man's terrestrial status and his reception of celestial ministry. Okay? This is the 5 mortal epochs they're talking about. You know, this is the 5th epical revelation. What's the other 5? The first epical revelation was Caligaston, the Caligaston 100. The second was Adam and Eve. The third was Melchizedek. The fourth being Jesus. And this is the 5th. That's what they're talking about. Planetary mortal epochs. All right? All right. Okay. Tim.
Life is initiated on the planets by the life carriers, who watch over its development until sometime after the evolutionary appearance of mortal man. Before the life carriers leave a planet, they duly install a planetary prince as ruler of the realm. With this ruler, there arrives a full quota of subordinate auxiliaries and ministering helpers. And the first adjudication of the living and the dead is simultaneous with his arrival.
Okay, so what they're talking about was Caligaston, right? The planetary prince. Of course, we know he defaulted, but when he came, that was the first adjudication. So that indicates that there were beings that were survivable even before Caligaston got here, right? So that was the first adjudication. What would have been the second adjudication? That would probably been with the arrival of Adam and Eve, right? More likely. Okay? And then there's always one when a new son comes also, any kind of son of God, right? Okay? Millie, would you take the next one, please?
Yes. With the emergence of human groupings, this planetary prince arrives to inaugurate human civilization and to focalize human society. Your world of confusion is no criterion of the early days of the reign of the planetary princes, for it was near the beginning of such an administration on Urantia that your planetary prince, Caligastia, cast his lot with the rebellion of the system sovereign Lucifer. Your planet has pursued a stormy course ever since.
We all know that, right? All right. Rodney, did you take the next one?
On a normal evolutionary world, racial progress attains its natural biological peak during the regime of the planetary prince, and shortly thereafter, the system sovereign dispatches a material son and daughter to that planet. These imported beings are of service as biologic uplifters. Their default on Urantia further complicated your planetary history.
Okay, so what is this telling us? This is telling us that during the reign of the planetary prince, we normally reach the biologic peak. What are they talking about? In other words, human beings evolve to the maximum of where they're going to be. Okay? And so they dispatch a material son and daughter. What's the material son and daughter do? They come and have millions of children, and these children mix with the human races. Okay? Marry them, that sort of thing. And so that gives us the biologic uplifting. Okay? The violet blood mixes with all the other races. Okay? And we know that that did not go well on our planet, right? Because Adam and Eve defaulted on their mission. They actually mixed themselves with the beings on the planet, so that defaulted the whole process, right? Way too early for that to happen. So that's what gave us our complicated planetary history, as they're talking about, right? Okay. Just like on Ancient
Were they
Aliens,
not supposed to breed themselves, only their children?
they're not supposed to breed themselves, only their children. Only their children's children, I believe, is correct.
And only after an adequate
Yeah, they're supposed.
populace of children.
Yeah, they're supposed to have over a million children before that started.
What did they do before they were ready?
Huh?
What did the children do before they were ready? In other words, if they had all
They
these children-
intermarried.
I know, but they were, but
The children intermarried with their brothers and
yeah,
sisters.
but not until after there was a certain large amount of children.
No, they did it from the
Oh, they
beginning.
did it from the beginning.
yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, they did it from the beginning. We're talking about material sons and daughters, not humans. Right? Okay. All right. And so if they would have waited, by the time the children or the grandchildren started mating with the races, there would have been millions of them. So that influx of blood that they talk about in Ancient Aliens of about 39,000 years ago,
Yeah.
that's when they were here. Okay? That's what changed our DNA. But there wasn't enough of it. So the change was there, but it took longer for it to take effect. Okay? If we would have had more of it, we would have had less disease, would have been more civilized. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on, right?
Music and art.
Music, art, everything, right? Okay, it's interesting to when I watch Ancient Aliens, how many things that they are correct about the dates and many things, you know. So, okay, let's keep going. Who's that? You are?
When the intellectual and ethical progress of the human race has reached the limits of evolutionary development, there comes an avonal son of paradise on a magisterial mission, and later on, when the spiritual status of such a world is nearing its limit of natural attainment, the planet is visited by a paradise bestowal son. The chief mission of a bestowal son is to establish the planetary status, release the spirit of truth for planetary function, and thus effect the universal coming of the Father Gesture.
And that's on all planets, right? Okay. All right. And we know that that's already happened on this planet because we had Jesus of Nazareth, right? Here again, your answer deviates. There has never been a magisterial mission on your world. Neither was your bestowal son of the avonal order. Normally, a bestowal son is an avonal or a magisterial son, right? Your planet enjoyed the signal honor of becoming the mortal home planet of the sovereign son, Michael of Nebadon. And he's a creator son, right? Tim, would you take the next one, please?
As a result of the ministry of all the successive orders of divine sonship, the inhabited worlds and their advancing races began to approach the apex of planetary evolution. Such worlds now become ripe for the accumulating mission, the arrival of the Trinity Teacher Sons. This epic of the Teacher Sons is the vestibule to the final planetary age, evolutionary utopia, the age of light and life.
And we know that the Trinity Teacher Sons are Danals, right? These are Paradise Sons also. And this happens later on in the history of a planet because we've reached a certain amount of intellect and spiritualization that it's right for this teacher son to come and teach us, right?
Does the planet that reaches light and life, does that continue forever, or does it eventually?
Yeah, it keeps going on and on
After,
and on,
okay,
and on
so
after it reaches light and life. No.
it stays.
Keep in mind, because the benefits of the spiritualization and the society of these planets that's reached light and life, many beings that's born during this period of time fuse with their adjustments on the planet and bypass the mansion worlds, right? Because they're on a higher level.
But it does continue forever.
But it does continue on forever.
So, hey Roger, the Teacher Sons were trinitized by the Paradise Trinity, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Roger,
Yeah.
when, like say, the Trinity Teacher Sons show up way off in the future on this planet, like they do on other planets, do they? They obviously are not material.
Well,
When
they
show
probably.
up,
Well, Rodney, they probably take on a material form just like Jesus did. right?
Or not like Jesus, but like Melchizedek?
More like Melchizedek. Yeah, sorry, that's a better example.
Yeah, okay, that's the way I
Yeah, they
was
would
at.
take on a human form probably so that they can be seen by all races.
I figured as much.
And it's so far in the future, communication will be totally different. So I'm sure if a Trinity Teacher Son comes, everyone on the planet will know simultaneously that he's arrived. You know, and what is
If Satan is still alive.
Yeah, if you're still alive, that's right. Millie, would you take the next one and the one after that, please? Because this is a short paragraph.
This classification of human beings will receive particular attention in succeeding papers.
Okay.
Number 5, the creature kinship serial. Planets are not only organized vertically into systems, constellations, and so on, but the universe administration also provides for horizontal groupings according to type, series, and other relationships. This lateral administration of the universe pertains more particularly to the coordination of activities of a kindred nature, which have been independently fostered on different spheres. These related classes of universe creatures are periodically inspected by certain composite core of high personalities presided over by long experienced phenometers.
So do y'all understand what they're saying? It's not only just the universes are organized into systems and constellations, but planets of like nature are sort of interconnected, not physically connected, but their administration is interconnected because they're so similar to each other. So they administer them like in the groups, just like humans or beings, you know. All right. And let's go on. Rodney, would you take the next one?
These kinship factors are manifest on all levels, for kinship serials exist among non-human personalities as well as among moral creatures, even between human and superhuman orders. Intelligent beings are vertically related in 12 great groups of 7 major divisions each. The coordination of these uniquely related groups of living beings is probably effected by some not fully comprehended technique of the Supreme Being.
So this is not only mortals that's interconnected like this, but things like angels and higher personalities also, right? And there's probably eventually will be managed through the Supreme Being. Okay?
6. Adjuster fusion series. The spiritual classification or grouping of all mortals during their prefusion experience is wholly determined by the relation of the personality status to the indwelling mystery monitor. Almost 90% of the inhabited worlds of Nebadon are peopled with adjuster fusion mortals, in contrast with the nearby universe, where scarcely more than 1/2 of the worlds harbor beings who are adjuster indwelt candidates for eternal fusion.
Okay, so y'all think about what they're telling us here. There's a close universe that just says scarcely more than half are beings that are adjuster fusion candidates. But 90% of our universe are adjusting fusion candidates. So there are local universes out there that are not all adjuster type beings, right? They may have a large number of spirit fusion mortals instead of adjuster fusion, okay? Techniques.
So hey Roger, the word pre-fusion, it just means that they're not quite there yet?
Yeah, they're not fused yet. Yeah, we could be called a pre-fusion being, right? Because we have not fused with our adjusters. That's why we're considered faith sons of God. We're not really sons of God until we fuse, right? And many of us will not fuse till around the 5th or 6th mansion world because we're not spiritually motivated enough till then, right?
And it says here it's determined by the relation of the personality status.
Yeah.
It has a lot to do with our personality or
our personality and our spirit receptivity of the adjuster, right? The whole idea is to allow oneself to be totally submissive to the will of God, basically.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Techniques of terrestrial escape. There is fundamentally only one way in which individual human life can be initiated on the inhabited worlds, and that is through creature procreation and natural birth. But there are numerous techniques whereby man escapes his terrestrial status and gains access to the inward moving stream of paradise ascenders. So there's only one way to start, and that's to be born, right? So do you think we'll ever create a robot with a soul?
No.
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 As they say in the South, ain't going to happen, right? It's just not possible. It's not going to happen, right?
And just to bring to your attention, it's going on 8:40 in Georgia time.
Okay. Let's see where we are here.
Well, almost done.
Are we?
Section 6 has another seven
Oh,
Yeah,
sections to
we'll
go.
probably have another minute. Let's go ahead and get techniques of terrestrial escape done. Let's do 2 more slides and we'll do that another heading. Technique of terrestrial escape. There is fundamentally only one way in which individual human life can be initiated on the inhabited worlds, and that is through creature procreation and natural birth. But there are numerous techniques whereby man can escape his terrestrial status. I just read this. Yeah. Let's go on. No, we're at 6, aren't we?
this is really interesting.
Yeah, terrestrial escape. Well, we got 2 more sections after this, 2 or 3. Can't remember. I don't have a book, so.
My pages
I'm too far off to see.
Okay, wait, I'm sorry. Oh, we're almost done.
Are we?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we can do it. Well, yeah, I think we can.
You think we can? Okay, well, let's keep going. All right. Tim, would you take the next one?
All of the differing physical types and planetary series of mortals alike enjoy the ministry of thought adjusters, guardian angels, and the various orders of the messengers hosts of the infinite spirit. All alike are liberated from the bonds of the flesh by the emancipation of natural death, and all alike go thence to the martial worlds of spiritual evolution and mind progress.
Okay, so we all die, right?
But we're never dead.
That's right, we're never dead, right? That's the natural death is the normal way. Now you can leave by fusion with the adjuster, right? Let's keep going.
From time to time, on motion of planetary authority or the system rulers, special resurrections of the sleeping survivors are conducted. Such resurrections occur at least every millennium of planetary time, when not all the, quote, many of those who sleep in the dust awake, unquote. These special resurrections are the occasion for mobilizing special groups of ascenders for special service in the local universe plan of mortal ascension. There are both practical reasons and sentimental associations connected with these special resurrections.
So about every 1,000 years there's a resurrection of the sleeping survivors, and those are beings who do not go on the 3rd day of the ancient world because they haven't reached the 3rd psychic circle, right? Okay, Rodney, would you take the next one?
Throughout the earlier ages of an inhabited world, many are called to the mansion spirits. At the special and the millennial resurrections, but most survivors are repersonalized at the inauguration of a new dispensation associated with the advent of a divine son of planetary service.
So many are reawakened on when a magisterial son comes, right? Or a Trinity teacher son. Okay.
1. Mortals of the dispensational or group order of survival. With the arrival of the first adjuster on an inhabited world, the guardian seraphim also make their appearance. They are indispensable to terrestrial escape. Throughout the life-lapse period of the sleeping survivors, the spiritual values and eternal realities of their newly evolved and immortal souls are held as a sacred trust by the personal or by the group guardian seraphim.
So, the guardian seraphim are necessary to take our spiritual, our spirit values and our who we are to the dimension world, so that it's there when we're repersonalized, right? The group guardians of assignment to the sleeping survivals always function with the judgment suns on their world advance. He shall send his angels, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, with each seraphim of assignment to the repersonalization of a sleeping mortal. Their function is the returned adjuster, the same immortal father fragment that lived in him during the days of the flesh, and thus is identity restored and personality resurrected. During the sleep of the subject, their waiting adjusters serve on Divinington, that's the Father's world. They never indwell another mortal mind during this interment. So during the period they die and they're asleep until they're resurrected on the mansion world, the adjuster serves on Divinington, training other adjusters, probably. Okay. Tim, would you take the next one, please?
Just one of the older worlds of mortal existence harbor those highly developed and exquisitely spiritual types of human beings who are virtually exempt from the Miranja life. The earlier age of the animal origin races are characterized by the primitive mortals who are so immature that fusion with their adjusters is impossible. The reawakening of these mortals is accomplished by the guardian seraphim in conjunction with an individualized portion of the immortal spirit of the third source and center.
So these type beings are too spiritually immature to fuse, right? So they're giving a fragment from the third source and center, and they become spirit fusion beings.
And they're like the ones that only live for 25 years.
Yeah.
So they really have a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes. Thus are the sleeping survivors of a planetary age repersonalized in the dispensation roll calls. But with regard to the non-solvable personalities of a realm, no immortal spirit is present to function with the group guardians of destiny, and this constitutes cessation of creature existence. While some of your records have pictured these events as taking place on the planets of mortal death, they all really occur on the mansion worlds.
Okay, so those beings that are non-salvageable, in other words, they make the decision not to survive, or there's nothing spiritual about them, they do not awaken on the mansion worlds again. Right? So that's why it's important to make that decision while you're alive. Rodney, would you take the next one?
Okay, number 2. Mortals of the individual glitters of ascension. The individual progress of human beings is measured by their successive attainment and traversal, mastery, of the 7 cosmic circles. These circles of mortal progression are levels of associated intellectual, social, spiritual, and cosmic insight values. Starting out in the 7th circle, mortals strive for the first, and all who have attained the 3rd immediately have personal guardians of destiny assigned to them. These mortals may be repersonalized into Miranja life independent of dispensational or adjudications.
Other adjudications. In other words, on the 3rd day they arrive on the mansion world because they've reached the 3rd psychic circle, right? And we all hope that we're in that category, right? Okay. Here.
Throughout the earlier ages of an evolutionary world, few mortals go to judgment on the third day, but as the ages pass, more and more the personal guardians of destiny are assigned to the advancing mortals, and thus increasing numbers of these evolving creatures are repersonalized on the first mansion world on the third day after natural death. On such occasions, the return of the adjuster signalizes the awakening of the human soul, and this is the repersonalization of the dead, just as literally as when the en masse roll is called at the end of a dispensation on the evolutionary worlds.
So y'all remember that when you reach the third psychic circle, you're assigned a personal guardian seraphim. Actually two, right? And that's what they're talking about here. So since you have a personal guardian seraphim, when you die, that guardian seraphim on the third day arrives on the mansion worlds, and your adjuster does too, and then you're repersonalized at that point.
But how do you get a guardian of destiny, Roger? Just based on values?
A personal one comes when you reach the third psychic circle on everyone. So if you've not reached the third psychic circle, you have a group guardian. In other words, you may be in a group of 10, you may be in a group of 500, depending on how spiritual you are. So we hope that people that are studying this book have reached the third psychic circle because they're seeking out for the will of God, and that's part of it. You get a cosmic concept of the universe, and that helps. There are three groups of individual ascenders. The less advanced land on the initial or first mansion world. The more advanced group may take up the Moroncha career on any of the intermediate mansion worlds in accordance with previous planetary progression. The most advanced of these orders really begin their Moroncha experience on the 7th mansion world. So depending on where you are spiritually, you could start out your career anywhere on the mansion worlds. Every 10 days you get advanced until you get to the world you are assigned to. Tim, would you take the next one?
Orders of the probationary dependent orders of ascension. The arrival of an adjuster constitutes identity in the eyes of the universe, and all indwelt beings are on the roll calls of justice. But temporal life on the evolutionary worlds is uncertain, and many die in youth before choosing the paradise career. Such adjuster indwelt children, as they youth follow the parent of most advanced spiritual status, thus going to the system finata world, the probationary nursery, on the third day, at a special resurrection, or at the regular millennial and dispensation roll calls.
Notice here it says the most advanced of the couple. So the child is awakened when the most advanced gets to the mansion world, right? And then they go on. Millie, would you take the next one?
Yes. Children who die when too young to have thought adjusters are repersonalized on the finality world of the local systems concomitant with the arrival of either parent on the mansion worlds. A child acquires physical entity at mortal birth, but in the matter of survival, all adjusterless children are reckoned as still attached to their parents.
Why is that? Because they don't have souls yet, right? The soul does not start until when? The adjuster arrives. Okay, so it gives them the opportunity to get that adjuster when they get on these worlds. Rodney, would you take the next one?
In due course, thought adjusters come to dwell these little ones, while the seraphic ministry to both groups of the probationary dependent orders of survival is in general similar to that of the more advanced parent, or is equivalent to that of the parent in case only one survives. Those attaining the third circle, regardless of the status of their parents, are accorded personal guardians.
Okay, so if they've reached the third circle, even as a child, they're assigned a personal guardian, right? Okay.
Well, how could they do that as a child? Interesting.
You know, many children at a young age makes the decision for the paradise path. I decided at 16 that my goal in life was to serve God. You know, and that's young for people to decide to do that. So, you know, that's.
I decided when I was 5.
There you go.
Honestly.
Similar probation nurseries are maintained on the finaliter spheres of the constellation and the universe headquarters for the adjusterless children of the primary and secondary modified orders of ascenders.
So these children's spheres are all the way up the chain, right? Mortals of the secondary modified orders of ascension. These are the progressive human beings of the intermediate evolutionary worlds. As a rule, they are not immune to natural death, but they are exempt from passing through the 7 mansion worlds. It's because they're higher spiritually, right? Tim, would you take the next one, please?
The less perfected groups were awakened on the headquarters of their local system, passing by only the mansion worlds. The intermediate group go to the constellation training worlds. They pass by the entire Morancha regime of the local system. Still further on, in the planetary ages of spiritual striving, many survivors awaken on the constellation headquarters, and there begin the paradise ascent.
So you can awaken on the constellation level if you're high enough, right? And even skip the system capital.
So, hey Roger, the paradise ascent is just another way of saying the ascension career, correct?
The ascension career, that's
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Millie, would you take the next one?
But before any of these groups may go forward, they must journey back as instructors to the worlds they missed, gaining many experiences as teachers in those realms which they passed by as students. They all subsequently proceed to paradise by the ordained routes of mortal progression.
So you don't get away with anything, do you? You still have to go back through the worlds as teachers. Teach those who come behind you. That way they know you've learned the lessons, right? Rodney, would you take the next one?
5 mortals of the primary modified order of ascension. These mortals belong to the adjuster fused type of evolutionary life, but they are most often representative of the final phases of human development on an evolving world. These glorified beings are exempt from passing through the portals of death. They are submitted to sun seizure. They are translated from among the living and appear immediately in the presence of the sovereign sun on the headquarters of the local universe.
And that's probably beings that live on planets that have reached the age of light and life, right?
Yeah. These are the mortals who fuse with their adjuster during mortal life, and such adjuster-fused personalities traverse space freely before being clothed with Morancha forms. These fused souls go by direct adjuster transit to the resurrection halls of the higher Morancha spheres, where they receive their initial Morancha investitures, just as do all other mortals arriving from the evolutionary worlds.
It makes you wonder where they go if they can move freely through the universe.
Really?
This primary modified order of mortal ascension may apply to individuals in any of the planetary series from the lowest to the highest stage of the adjuster fusion worlds, but it is more frequently functions on the older of the spheres after they have received the benefits of numerous sojourns of the divine sons. So that would be the age of light and life, right? Tim, would you take the next one, please?
With the establishment of the planetary era of light and life, many go to the universe Morancha worlds by the primary modified order of translation. Further along in the advanced stages of settled existence, with the majority of the mortals leaving a realm, are embraced in this class. The planet is regarded as belonging to this series, natural death becoming decreasingly frequent, only spheres long settled in light and life. Presented by Melchizedek of the Jerusalem School of Planetary Administration.
Alright. Hey, we did make it, didn't we? Alright, that was a good paper, wasn't it?
paper.
Really good paper. Okay. Millie, would you like to close us in a prayer tonight, dear?
I can do that. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time together again to study this revelation. This particular book gives us comfort in knowing that you're there and you're waiting for us, and there's a way for us to get to you. We thank you for that. Amen.
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 Thank you for joining us at home. Please come see us again. Next week we'll move on to paper 50.